The recent move from Mantra's Ohm coin, I think, is setting up for a pretty epic trap. And so I think what we're seeing is that the price moves may not be what a lot of people are expecting. So I want to talk a little bit about that today, because I do think that there's going to be a certain contingent of people who are probably going to make a lot of money, and then there's going to be another contingent of people that are probably going to get wrecked. Obviously, we do know that there's already been kind of this third contingent of people that have already been wrecked due to the recent massive price volatility that we've seen out of Ohm. It appeared over the past couple of days that it might have been a rug. So far, it's seeming that maybe that's not totally the case, but there are definitely some still lingering questions there. I want to give you guys an update of kind of what the most recent situation is with the Ohm coin, give you all the information that you need to know in terms of, is this a buy? Is this a sell? Should you not touch it? All of that type of stuff. I do see that there are kind of more and more people taking kind of increasingly limited positions in this possible Ohm play, because if we do see a recovery, it's going to be a very, very lucrative recovery, right? And so I think that's the most important thing to see, is like it could be very, very high risk, very, very high reward. And so if you use a relatively small amount of money, obviously the odds that you lose your money is quite high. But if it does work out, then the reward will definitely be very, very, very nice. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. First off, we will go ahead and we'll take a look at the crypto bubbles. We can see Ohm actually having a little bit of a resurgence here on the daily. We can see up 26.8% in an otherwise pretty rough market. We did actually just have a recent video about Pi, about how Pi price was doing relatively well. That, of course, apparently has not stuck around long, as we have seen a pretty decent sell-off over the past couple, or I guess over the past day. We did see, though, on the week, we are still up at least a little bit, but much of the gains that we have seen have kind of been given back already. However, of course, this is an Ohm video, so we'll talk about what we were seeing here recently. Of course, in the month and week, we're down again almost 90%, but in the day, we're up about 26%. So if we took a look at the price chart, we can see price hovering around kind of the 670 to 620 range, and then boom, all of a sudden it just falls off a cliff and bottoms out here around 50 cents is kind of the low. And of course, we have actually seen this resurge a little bit. We're sitting at about 78 cents right now, peaking at about 94 cents. So definitely kind of from bottom to top, almost a 2x, which would have been a pretty good play if you were kind of in there and had maybe called the bottom correctly. Again, of course, there's a massive amount of risk with doing this, just because you don't know if this is a rug. Obviously, if you look at the historical price chart of Luna, when it had its collapse, it did have a little bit of a bounce. People thought it might be rallying and coming back, and then of course it did kind of continue to sell its way off to zero. So of course, Luna did kind of have this whole grand unraveling. Ohm is trying to save themselves and trying to kind of, patch some of the holes and fix some of the things to restore confidence in the project. And they are trying to kind of move in that direction. So what we can see here is that the Mantra CEO, John Mullen, plans to burn all of his team's tokens in order to win back the trust of the network's community following the sudden crash of Ohm on April 13th. So what we can see here is the team's tokens are actually vesting only starting in 2027, which is 30 months from mainnet launch. I'm planning to burn all of my team tokens, and when we have turned it back around, the community and investors can decide if I have earned it back. I think this is definitely a kind of an honorable way to try and go about saving the project. Again, I'm not totally sure if this will really do much. We'll see. I do definitely think it kind of moves in the right direction to kind of show that the team is in fact kind of committed to the long-term success of Ohm. Of course, there was the kind of speculation that the team may have dumped their tokens and that they were essentially kind of part of the rug here. If what they are saying is in fact true, and this was just some rampant speculation and some kind of like leverage trading that kind of spark this cascade of liquidations, then that of course is nothing that they really had any direct involvement with, and we could potentially see a turnaround. Again, hard to say for sure, just because so many of their biggest supporters and whales and all this type of stuff have been massively burned, so it's very hard to say for sure, but could potentially be a possibility. And so we can start to see that there are people kind of starting to take this bid and see maybe how it plays out, right? So we can see here, Dom's Crypto saying an even bigger bullish pennant is about to complete for Mantra. If Ohm manages to break through $1.20, would not be surprised to see about the $3.50 range. Again, this is about 40% down from where we were kind of pre-crash. So still a ways to go, but this obviously would be a massive recovery, about 7x from the bottom here. So definitely a really nice trade for anybody who is on kind of the winning side of that. I do think people, as we started to see price fall off here, if we go back and we look at price chart, we can see as price started to fall off, people were piling on shorts. So there could be a level of kind of reverse action happening where we saw all the liquidations going this direction. We could potentially see kind of a reverse option happening here as people start to get liquidated on shorts, and then kind of has a little bit of a short squeeze that could push price back up in the other direction. So we'll have to see for sure exactly how this works. But if we do look at the price here, obviously we can see RSI still massively oversold, actually finally coming back inside the Bollinger Bands. We'd spent a couple days outside here. If we look at the hour, we can kind of get a little bit more detail here, and we could kind of see a little bit more what's going on. Obviously, massive sell-off. This is really kind of more what's relevant at this point, right? So we can see here there's a little bit of that recovery, continue to sell further. We do seem to have put a level of support in kind of at this like 46-cent range. From there, we have started to climb a little bit back up. Here's this kind of bullish pennant that was being referred to in that earlier post. We can see it's kind of seemed to break out a little bit, and then of course is kind of sold off a little bit. Price again, not really too volatile here. We're not seeing, too crazy to the upside, too crazy to the downside. We are seeing that the price has appeared to stabilize kind of in the 70-ish cent range, at least recently. Of course, we do have that support down here where we have kind of seen a bottom out a couple of different times at this 46-cent range. And then we are running into some into some resistance here, kind of at like this 87-cent range. Of course, we did break above it here and get close to the dollar, so we did have kind of that resistance level here. So if I had to kind of put some numbers to it and draw some lines, probably these are going to be the two biggest resistance levels, and then we can go back up here and we're probably going to be looking at something around the $1.30 range is kind of the next level of resistance from there. So that's kind of a tactical level of what we're seeing out of the chart here. We can see on the hourly RSI actually coming back up close to neutral, not quite back to neutral yet, but we could see here, RSI getting back down to like 1 at this point in time, which is an insane level of oversold. Obviously, if this would have been a rug, that makes total sense. The chart is effectively over in terms of like analyzing it from a technical perspective. What we can see is, maybe price has started to stabilize. So we'll have to see exactly how this ends up working out here. But there is a potential, there's a potential play to be had here. Again, you have to make your own decision with that. This is an incredibly high risk. I personally will probably just end up sitting this play out just because I frankly am not super familiar with Mantra to begin with. Obviously, it is an RWA coin. I think there are a lot of good alternatives there anyway. And so overall, I'm kind of focused on some of those others that I'm interested in that space. However, if you are looking to trade Ohm and potentially get in on this, as you can see here, this is tradable on BTCC. I do have that link in the description below to BTCC. So, definitely a really great option if you are looking to do that. They do have both, they actually have just introduced isolated trading. So previously it was only cross trading, so you can now do isolated margin trading, which is really great news. They also are doing a 10% bonus on first time deposits and up to $10,055 in trading volume fees. So if you are looking to potentially trade in on this Ohm kind of action, volatility, and all the craziness that's going on in here, BTCC could be a really great place to do that. And again, I do have that link in the description below if you are interested. So overall, that's kind of what we've got today in terms of Ohm price, the kind of recent updates. So far, the team is playing it off like they had nothing to do with it, like they have not been involved with any nefarious activities or anything like that. I have not seen anything from like the blockchain sleuths that show anything, kind of potentially damaging from the company's perspective. I also just haven't seen too much kind of regarding any of this so far. So there could be a little bit more to kind of reveal itself at this point in time. And of course, I do think price, will definitely move very violently based on kind of some of the outcomes or some of the kind of the new revealings that we find from some of this stuff. So definitely kind of stay on your toes. Like I said, if you are getting into this trade, I would definitely not be mortgaging the farm or anything for that matter to be getting in on a trade like this. This, in my mind, is a very, very high risk, high reward trade. If it works out, you'll definitely do well, but there's an incredibly highly likely chance that it does not actually work out. So just keep that in mind. Again, nothing that I say is financial advice. You do need to make your own decisions, and you really need to be careful if you are looking to be getting into something like this. I, of course, cannot condone any type of activity like this just because I don't know your situation. I don't have the expertise to be able to recommend based on whatever your situation is, all of that type of stuff. So you just really do need to take your own accountability for this type of stuff. If you haven't noticed, and if it's not already obvious to you, crypto is a very dangerous place where you can lose all of your money. So just be very, very careful. So overall, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. Hopefully, this kind of update talking about, potentially a little bit of a resurgence trade coming in here for Ohm, or potentially, if this is kind of like that dead cat bounce here, maybe getting in on some shorts and kind of riding it all the way down to zero. Either remain to be very strong possibilities. I do think that there is probably going to be a decent bit of volatility playing here, and there will be people who make a lot, and definitely the other side of the people who do lose a lot. I don't think there's going to be really a side that only loses a little in this trade. I think it's going to be pretty violent. So we'll see how it goes. But overall, like I said, if you did find this video helpful and useful, a like and a subscribe really, really does help out. Also, if you have any thoughts, comments, feelings, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section below. I do read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do so. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.